Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day, and above all else, that you're looking after yourselves. And if it's raining where you are, please keep dry and safe. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another installment of Going for the One, where for the month of September, we are looking at our favorite debut albums. Sagosh, unfortunately, is away today due to illness. We miss you, Sagosh. Speedy recovery. We'll see you soon. Now, Jim is up with his next pick for favorite debut album. Jim,
I am up today. Thank you, Armando.
you're
Um,
welcome.
so I don't know if how these are going to air, but just our previous video we recorded was about a great power pop band, if you could call them that, out of Canada called Bare Naked Ladies. Uh, and Ken did an excellent job talking about their album Gordon. I am also going to talk about a power pop band, this time out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and this is the one and only Jellyfish and their debut album from 1990 called Belly Button. Um, a few notes about how Jellyfish came to be. They spawned from an early 80s kind of art rock power pop dance band, if you will, called Chrome Dinette. The leader of the band was a guy named Chris Kettner, and Chris wanted to sort of go more in a power pop type of vein, and met up with a guy who was out of the East Bay. His name is Andy Sturmer, and the two of them ended up forming a band called Zula Pool, which had a lot of good local club action here in the Bay Area. Um, what they wanted to do with Zula Pool got kind of stilted, and they ended up going with something with a little bit more of an acoustic nature to it, something that would lend itself more to Chris's uh, excellent playing on an acoustic bass. And so Zula Pool kind of spun into a band called Beatnik Beach. Um, from there, they did another year or so of club dates. They actually had an album released on Atlantic Records in '88, if I remember correctly. Um, Andy had a buddy from school days named Roger Manning, and Roger was brought into Beatnik Beach kind of towards the end of their run when their um, keyboard player left. And then Andy and Roger found that just kind of their creative juices were really kind of exploding and sort of being a little bit too big and broad from what Chris wanted Beatnik Beach to be. And so Andy and Roger left, and that was their songwriting partnership was kind of the beginning of what would become Jellyfish. Now, from a contemporary standpoint, Jellyfish took a lot of their inspirations and influences from bands like XTC, Crowded House, Danny Wilson. But really, the kind of raw material, the stuff that sort of fit into their DNA, came right out of the '70s. And it's very hard to kind of pin down, the exact things that were in there. I mean, I know that, they loved ELO, they loved Steely Dan, but I kind of go to some of the cover versions that they did live that really sort of um, kind of spell out their influences most broadly. Supertramp, Paul McCartney, both with and without wings, um, Fleetwood Mac, Kansas, Todd Rundgren, Badfinger, talking about McCartney, um, Player. They would do they would do a cover of "Baby Come Back" from Player. Um, so yeah, their '70s influence was really, really broad. So much so that when their first album was being created, they sought out a guy named Albie Gluten, which is an actual name of an actual person. And they sought him out specifically, even though he hadn't done work as a producer in a long time. But Albie Galutin was the producer of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Now, they went to get Albee not because they wanted a disco sound, but just overall, Andy and Roger were just kind of over the moon about the sound of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack and just how crisp and clean everything was. And it was just really, really distinctive. And they wanted that sort of sheen for Jellyfish. Um, Around that time, Jellyfish tended to get dropped into this label of bands called the Paisley Underground, which is a whole bunch of groups around kind of running up and down the west coast of California, or sorry, the west coast of the US. But they had two primary kind of flashpoints within the Los Angeles music scene, and then in around Sacramento, which is the capital of California. Bands like the Dream Syndicate, the Rain Parade, the Posies, Game Theory, the 3 O'Clock. These are all bands that can kind of be lumped in as sort of stylistic contemporaries of Jellyfish, but I don't think they really saw themselves as part of that Paisley underground. They were probably a little bit too thrift shopish, if you will. Um, so, um, so their album is very, very strong with 70s influences, but it's not like I don't think these influences take over the recording. So it's not like you can listen to it and say, "Oh my gosh, they're stealing this from this band," or it's this riff, or this kind of thing. Like they'll have some background vocal harmony things that they do on songs, just kind of like a ba 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 that are like very reminiscent of like a Burt Bacharach type of thing,
Hmm.
or Carpenters, but they won't, but it's not like, oh, they lifted this thing from Hold Your Head Up by Argent, which is another song that they covered live. Um, but anyway, the album Belly Button is just a fantastic piece of um, kind of one direction that music was going in the 90s, you know, once the synths were kind of shut down, but before grunge took off and sort of redefined, where music was going at that time.
Yeah.
The Belly Button album is just a fantastic listen to any music fan. I'm not going to go through it track by track, but I may bring a few things up along the way.
Please do.
They they brought in a broad palette of musicians to really make sure that they were able to achieve the sound that they wanted to. They brought in John Patitucci on bass and Toots Thielman on harmonica
Good
on a couple of
Lord.
tunes because that was the feel that they wanted on some tunes, kind of a jazz inflected waltz that opens the album. Um, and again, the way things are arranged and sung, again, there's a lot of strong 70s influences that go throughout the record. Putting this in the genre of power pop, I don't really know any other place you could put it because it's so strong on um, songwriting, hooks, and just overall aesthetic that you have to sort of put it in with the strongest of power pop. Rhino did a 3 CD set that kind of covered power pop through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I do know that a Jellyfish tune was on there. So they were kind of called out for them being, not sure if they're the kings of power pop, but they were certainly amongst the court, if you will.
They're a good
Um,
band. They're a good band. They really are.
yeah. Uh, there's one song, "The King is Half Undressed," that kind of sounded like their homage to Queen. I know Queen was another big influence on some of the direction they wanted to go for their sound.
Thank you for
Um,
mentioning that. Thank you.
well,
It's
it
true.
was appropriate.
It's true.
Um, Yeah, I don't want to go track by track in here because I think the album just kind of needs to be discovered on its own, without my sort of getting into the details, because it's an album that just surprises. I've been listening to this thing since 1990, and every time I put it on, there's something new in either the arrangement or the performance that just really surprises me. There's 10 songs on the album. I kind of went through and listed, what do I give the ratings on these songs? And there's no surprise that most of them are tens. Overall, I'm going to say that Billy Button is like a 9.7 out of 10. I just think that there's an absolutely astounding release. And one other thing to point out about Jellyfish is that they only had two albums in their history, and they kind of imploded upon themselves around 94. But
Yeah.
in the early 2000s, if memory serves right, there was a box set that a label called Not Lame Records put out, which was which was a four-disc set celebrating a band that only put out two albums. The fan club box set was a collection of demos, live performances, um, and other little things like snippets from radio interviews and whatnot. Uh, there's one of the radio interview portions where they're interviewed on the Canadian radio, and they start talking about Canadian bands, and you can hear Andy and Roger just sort of ripping everything off that they know it's Canadian, from
Yeah.
Gordon Lightfoot to Oscar Peterson. I mean, it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
everything's sort of flowing right out of them. That box set sold out immediately. And today, on the day that we're recording this, I did check eBay for what folks are asking for this. It's almost about 400 bucks. Um, there's
No. No,
yeah, there's a
I'm
lot
not
of the
doing it.
material that was re-released on some of the double disc sets and that Omnivore put out for this album. And again, if you want to hear um, sort of Jellyfish in an expanded form, I would highly recommend those. There's some imperfections. They use some edits of songs as opposed to the standard album version, which sort of gets my hackles up, but that might just be me. Um, anyway, Jellyfish Belly Button from 1990, absolutely killer debut. Um, for me, the follow-up LP, the sophomore, is even better, but it's just undeniable for me what a great record Belly Button was when it came out in 1990. Yes, I have a bias, but we'll talk about that some other time.
The only thing I'm going to say is I have both albums, Belly Button and Spilt Milk. And it's a big surprise, right, ladies and gentlemen? But I will say this. They are phenomenal. They are phenomenal in terms of their musicality,
Yeah.
the arrangements, the tight harmony vocals that they do. You can hear the Queen and Beach Boys influences on the vocals or harmony vocals big time. And if you haven't checked either one of these albums out, you are definitely missing out. That's my spiel. That's all I'm going to say. I'm done. That's all. That's no more can be said.
Yeah, Jim introduced me to them last year, so it's a
Mic drop.
nice discovery. Yeah, very
Yeah.
nice.
I guess the last thing I'll say about Jellyfish is that people sort of rag on them for, sort of the thrift shop, boutique look that's sort of developed around that time. But that's just all part of the sort of the kitschy sense of humor that those guys had. Before they played their first official gig as Jellyfish, in August of 1990, they did a secret warm-up show a few days earlier up in Marin County, which is north of San Francisco. But they billed themselves as the Smurfs with an umlaut over the U,
Oh
in
Lord.
sort of great the
Yeah.
Smurfs, and
Yeah.
in great Spinal Tap fashion, they had to put an umlaut in there.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I can't say enough great things about Jellyfish, and it's you know 10 tight songs. I think the album is maybe 42 minutes. So it's a good quick listen. It's available on all the streaming services. And, what the heck are you waiting for? Just shut me up and go listen.
I, I'll just finish it. To me, it's a shame that they went somewhat unnoticed because at that point in 90, like in the early 90s, you had like groups like Smashing Pumpkins that were coming through and people, and they, you know, basically Jellyfish got swept under the rug to a large extent. And that's unfortunate because they they crafted fantastic pop rock songs and just they went all over the map. And yeah, it's just unfortunate. It's really unfortunate.
I think they would have been more successful if college radio had been a thing at that point, the way it was in the late 70s, early 80s.
I think also too you couldn't pinpoint their genre. You couldn't pigeonhole them into
Right.
a genre. And radio and record companies at that point in the 90s, and then I will shut up, ladies and gentlemen, they were focusing on, rock. Is this rock? Is this alternative? Is it no, it's Jellyfish.
Yep.
It is what it is. It's Jellyfish. You know what I mean? They took all those influences, like the Beatles, Queen, Steely Dan, and blended them and put them in the blender, hit play, and they just did everything. They just mixed it up,
Yeah.
and they did it beautifully, beautifully. Oh, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, they're one of the other thing that comes to mind when you're talking about they did it beautifully. One of the main things that differentiated Jellyfish from their contemporaries was these amazing harmonies that they would do on their tracks,
Yeah,
four-part harmonies, and they pulled that stuff off live. And
yeah,
there are
yeah,
people who thought that it's like, are you kidding me? They're actually doing this live. And yeah,
yeah,
they did. The King is Half Undressed, I think, is the song that really focuses the sort of full flower of their,
yeah, yeah,
vocal arrangement and harmonic process.
yeah.
And again, they would do that stuff live, and people would be just dead drop silent in the clubs to hear them do that. So.
Okay, okay, yeah. And I remember watching an interview with Roger a few years back, and he was talking. He was asked about their sound, the Jellyfish sound, the harmonies, and he referenced the track "It's Late" from Queen as an influence in terms of the. I'm like, okay, he's not talking about a hit from Queen. He's talking about an album track. He's going deep. So
Mhm.
this is a musician digging deep and talking about what really pulled it out of him, like what his influences were. That is that's deep. I'm sorry. That's just it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh God. Okay, I'm getting chills right now. Just not talking about it, like literally. Like it's ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't checked the albums out, Belly Button or Spit Milk, what are you waiting for? Really? I mean, please do. Please do.
What
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Another episode in the can of Going for the One featuring Belly Button from Jellyfish. Thank you very much, Jim, for that selection. Fan bloody tastic. Fan bloody tastic. Ladies and gentlemen, again, put your comments down below on this album or any debut album that you deem your favorite, and we will definitely try and check them out. We don't know everything there is to know about music. We're not geniuses in any shape, form, or fashion. We're just bringing you albums that we want to talk about. Sometimes in a very concise way, sometimes in a very convoluted way, but we do bring our best to the channel every time, every chance we get. So please, again, check this album out and others that we've mentioned. And again, Sagosh, we miss you, and we will see you soon. And while you're at it, watching these episodes, please do check out another series of episodes that we did for the channel last August called 31 Perfect Albums. And we had fun doing that, just like we're having fun doing this series. And this has been great. This has been great. So we will be back with another episode of Going for the One, and we'll see you soon on the Music Den. Bye for now.